So, okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
We are from group 4. Today we are going to tell you and presentate about contexting. First of all, let me introduce my members first. First, there is me, Dehian Fadila, as today moderator. Second is Fauzan Ramadhani, and last but not least, we have Fauzi Rahman. So, without further ado, let's start our presentation. Introduction. In this material, we are going to tell you about introduced by Edward T. Hall's theory of contexting in communication, discuss the links between contexting and left or right brain distinction, and then illustrate a number of language behavior differences arising from contexting differences, and then show the relevance of contexting for translator, interpreters, and cultural mediators. And we are going to the very first material is high and low context. I'm going to explain you about this material. The words text and context have particular meanings here. Context is mainly in the physical context or internalized in the person by Hall in 1989. And as such is very close to Halliday and Hassan's. They said that nonverbal environment of a text, which is made up of the context of situation and the wider context of culture. In terms of communication, according to Hall, it is the amount of the information the other person can be expected to possess on a given subject while the text is transmitted information. Clearly, also, in any communication, the speaker and listener will have their own perception of the context. The more these perceptions are set, the more possible it will be, as Holiday and Hassan said, suggest to use them as framework for hypothesizing what is going to be said. As you can see here in the picture, there's the communication hall. Here there is the communication hall, and then there is the trumpeters, summons it all, and possible cultural priorities. Here you can see the HCC is diffuse and then loosely knit. And then the relationship is what is understood of the context of the message or the meta message. And then here the LCC, you can see the specific, tightly woven. The task is like what is said, the text of the message. And the next. As I just said about Haliday and Hassan, on the other hand, see the context of situation. See the context of the situation as a tangible construct, visible and audible, the description as in terms of a simple conceptual framework of three headings. The field, like what is happening, the tenor, who are taking part, and the mode, what part the language is playing. Interlocutors in each communication event will, usually out of awareness, arrange themselves and others along the context scale. We tend to believe we know how much needs to be said and explained to have our message understood the way we mean it. Whether this is true is usually difficult to judge objectively, as we cannot read the interlocutor's mind. In cross-cultural communication, the scope for error is even larger. There are then two aspects of communication. There are then two aspects of communication, text and context, each represented by a triangle. At one theoretical extreme, all the information that is to be conveyed is made visible or explicit in the text triangle, while at the other extreme, no text is necessary, as all the information is implicit. That is, it is contained in the context. The diagram adapted from Hall shows how both triangles operate together in incline to form the message. He explains that as a context is lost, information must be adapted if meaning is to remain context. And the last one, the fact that a culture is more HCC or LCC will also mean, according to Hall, that there will be other related text or context orientations. And then Victor and Simons said that have produced lists of typical and simplified rather than actual features of these two different orientations with some adaptation they are outlined below. Here you can see the scene is including setting, function, topic, and genre. And then the key point, there are tone or mood of communication. The participants include who is involved and what their roles are. The message from medium of communication including silence, sequence, whether there is a set or open agenda or expected order of things, co-occurrence patterns, whether they are marked or unmarked. And the last one is manifestation, whether some of the previous components are manifested explicitly or left implicit. Okay, and then sorry. Next material is English, the language of strangers, will be presented by Fauzi. Fauzi, time is yours.
Okay, thank you to the moderator. So I will explain about the English, the language of stranger. This chapter discusses various aspects of the English language, examining its characteristic and how it's employed in different cultural contexts. So this chapter discuss the the characteristic and how it's employed in different cultural contexts. There is some parts. I think it's 5 or 6 maybe. Let's see. Next slide, please. I think there's 6, as I remember. Yeah, there is 6. It's so let's break it down. There is first one is vocabulary and contexting. So English is discussed for having a large of vocabulary, more than many other language. It is point out that English tends to rely on a specific terms rather than shared knowledge to convey the meaning. Next one is translation challenge. The text explores difficulties in translating work from other language to English. Like an example, you are trying to translate from Japanese to English, where the translator had to choose the word carefully to to avoid the confusion due to the many of option in English. Next is cultural implication. English is seen as adaptable for explicit communication. Contrasts are made with language like I said before, Japanese and Urdu, which are described as more implicit. The discussion emphasized how language reflect cultural interactive and influencing how people to express the relationship and convey the meaning itself. 4 is American versus British English. The differences between American and British are already explored. I don't need to explain it again. These variations are attributed to cultural and historical factors. It's note that the explicit nature of American English connect into a low context culture in biasanya tuh the daily activities gitu. Now is historical context. The historical context development of English in language in the United States or US is examined already. It emphasized the importance of the explicit communication itself during the early day of the country colonization. Last one is Declaration of Independence. So this chapter or this text is references by Thomas Jefferson's emphasize on explicit communication when drafting the Declaration of Independence. This showcase importance placed on clear, universally understandable language in significant historical documents. So, in summary, this chapter or this part is provide insight into how the English language itself, especially the what is it, the American variant, American accent, is shaped by cultural, historical, and linguistic factors. These factors impact the communication style and expression, demonstrating the interconnect gitu of language with broader societal element. That's it, I guess. Thank you. I give it back to moderator.
Okay, thank you so much, Fauzi. And let's move on to the next material is contexting and the brain will be explained by Fauzan. Fauzan, time is yours.
Okay, thank you to the moderator. And next is Contexting and the Brain, Hall 1983 and 60 postulates that these two basic distinctions relate very closely to the brain and its division into left and right hemisphere. The left cerebral hemisphere is to a large extent regarded as being responsible for text, language production, facts, and logic, and for local narrowly focused attention, the right hemisphere, on the other hand, is largely responsible for relationship, the nonverbal, the holistic patterns, and broad, global, and flexible attention. Uh, so, how contexting theory suggests that brain left and right hemisphere are responsible for different aspects of language production, such as text and local attention, and for relationship, nonverbal patterns, and global attention. Next slide. Okay, the next slide is hemispherical cooperation. So, Ocklenberg and Guntur argue that the idea that one hemisphere control complex cognitive function like language processing is oversimplified. Uh, Chris acknowledged the brain a single integrated dynamic system, not a collection of bits or part. The right side understand from indirect contextual clues. So the next is brain lateralization and culture. Michael Chris uh, explained that culture influenced the use of cerebral hemisphere, while brain asymmetry is similar across cultures. People in different environments prioritize a certain aspect. Socialization and cultural orientation also influence hemisphere usage. Individualistic cultural use the left hemisphere, while collective, holistic, and context-sensitive cultural tend towards the right. And the last is lateralization, translation strategies, and the translator or interpreter brain lateralization and translation theory have evolved over the past uh, five, 50 years with decoding encoding model focusing on text structure and the process approach. American tradition now emphasize HCC context translator process locally. playing localized roles, translators, interpreters, and cultural mediators play crucial roles in successful communication. And the next, it's about grammatical be and do. This section aims to demonstrate how people from different cultures construct mental maps of the same reality and how those differences are reflected in language. Language is seen as a representation of our mental models, and the argument suggests that there's connection between high context culture and low context culture, orientation, and language use. Next, cultural differences in storytelling are highlighted with examples from North American and Greek subjects describing the same film. The discussion extends to how conflicts and negotiation are interpreted in different cultures. I think enough. I give it back to the moderator. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Fauzan and Fauzi. We already finished our material for today. Now I'm going to read the conclusion. This devolves into the interplay of language, culture, and cognition, primarily focusing on the dichotomy between high context culture, or HCC, and low context culture, or LCC. It unfolds across several chapters, examining the concept of text and the context, the characteristic of the English language, the relationship between brain hemisphere and culture, and the grammatical constructs be and do different cultural contexts. In conclusion, this chapter unveils a rich tapestry where language intricately weaves together with cultural nuances and cognitive processes. It underscores the pivotal role of cultural orientation in shaping communication with implication for translation, interpretation, and the broader understanding of language used in diverse contexts. I think that's enough from our group. If you have any question, please ask it on the next meeting. Thank you so much, and we are sorry for our mistake. And thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wait, wait.